Okay, no problem. So we're back. Starting at the mayor's report again, I was talking about before the sound stopped that we are still involved in the volunteer effort to make masks for residents of the city of Lynn Haven, as well as healthcare providers, those who need those. And because we have been advised by CDC that in public places, that is probably what we should be doing right now, both preventative and precautionary, especially if you have an immune issue or you're an older person in our community. So if you're able to sew, you can drop those off in the box in front of Victoria's Last Bite on Florida Avenue, corner of 9th there by Roberts Hall, and people will be very grateful. And I've been sewing quite a few, but my machine is not working at the time. I've got a part ordered for that. As soon as I can get back online with it, I'll be helping with that effort too. As far as my mayor's report, besides that, I've been following national and state news updates, just trying to stay abreast of what's happening, and also participating in the weekly conference call with the health department and the county officials and the other municipalities to hear what they're doing and to make sure that we're sort of staying in line with everything. I know our fire chief, John DeLange, our police chief, Ricky Ramey, and city manager, Vicki Gaynor, have all been participating as well and staying on top of all of that information and doing a great job. The governor did form his task force yesterday. They talked at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and I was very pleased to see that we did have a local representative from the Panhandle. Jimmy Petronas will be our one of our people on that task force to help with the reopening of the state. And I was very pleased to hear that, because as all of you know, the Panhandle has different issues than South Florida. And many of the mayors from South Florida who are mayor is a different type of mayor. The mayor of an entire county are involved on that task force as well. Broward, Hillsborough, and Duval County, and Jacksonville, and some others. So that's really all that I have as far as a mayor's report. And I'll move over to Commissioner Russell, if you'd like to give your report at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much to report. Just ask for everybody to please stay safe. And if you see any city workers out, wave at them and let them know you appreciate them being out doing their job. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. Commissioner Tender.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wanted to add on to the mask situation. I personally have run out of elastic, and I've ordered 30 feet, but it's coming from way, way, way away. I'll just say that. So I probably won't see it until June. So if anybody out there that doesn't sew by any chance has any elastic, please take it down to the bin, because everybody's waiting on the same thing, I think. And as far as, anything else I've got going on. I have some questions, but I think I'll wait until public commentary, because I got them in through different residents. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tender. Commissioner Aldridge.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to tell everyone again, keep your heads up. We're all in this together. But I would like to request, it's getting stressful, and it's getting kind of tense for a lot of people. Because we're all stuck in our houses, and we're all, very confined, and we're not used to that as Americans. But, for us to smile to someone in the other car, or to wave and say, we're with you, or we're together in this, that's a choice we can all make as citizens of Lynn Haven, to do that, to show kindness, to show love as opposed to anger. And I would just encourage our citizens, again, we're all in it. Let's smile to one another. When you see each other, smile, wave, make each other feel good during this time, even though the external seems like it's pressing on us. But that's all the report I really have, Mayor. Just try to encourage everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Aldridge, and encouragement is certainly important. If I could go back just for a second to Commissioner Tender's report when she was talking about elastic for the mask. Another thing that can be used are just strips of material or ribbon to tie the mask. You can put one on each corner of the mask, and that's what I'm doing when I ran out too. So just a little comment there. So moving on to Commissioner Perno.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much to report other than my appreciation for all our city employees, our first responders, our essential workers, and I think we're turning the corner on hopefully getting non-essentials and what our state's doing to hopefully get back to everybody getting back to work and hopefully seeing this thing through. So I just like to thank everybody, and mostly our first responders. I think our city manager put out a little encapsulation of our police department, and it really filled me with pride to know what our police department goes through, and how those people, even our fire department too. I just have the utmost appreciation for everybody in our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perno. That concludes our commissioners' reports. I'll move on to item number 5, which is our city manager's report. Mrs. Gaynor. Mrs. Gaynor,
Hi.
your microphone is.
Yes, had to take it off mute there. Mayor, the city is still really busy, even in the midst of this COVID pandemic that's going on. Paving is still going very, very well throughout the city. I had some positive comments about that. We are spending a lot of time on FEMA calls to continue to get the reimbursements in for the city. And I will tell you that those calls are going very, very well. To the point that we see the reimbursements coming in much faster than before. We are definitely keeping tabs on all of our employees and making sure that they are safe. They have the PPE they need when they're out. And if they need to be with family members because of some other reasons, we're making sure that that happens. And so the city has a lot going on right now, and we just continue to run the city smoothly, taking payments. And we do encourage people, while we're not doing turnoffs and we're not charging fees, to make sure that you go on and pay your utility bills so that you're not far behind at any sense. And some of them may have received letters just to remind them of that, which I think is very, very important. But we are not doing any turnoffs or adding any additional fees there. And we are working with everyone in almost every situation in terms of departmental services. So thanks to the commission for being so supportive and working with me and working through so many issues. When you have to do it over the phone, I know it's a little bit more difficult, but we're getting there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaynor. We appreciate all that you are doing, and certainly, as just to echo what Commissioner Perno said, and Aldridge and Russell, and Commissioner Tender, we are all so grateful and pleased with what the city employees and especially our first responders are doing in the city. So thank you for such a great job. At this time, I'd like to ask for item number 6, which is the city attorney's report. Mr. Albritton.
Nothing to report at this time, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Now I'll move to item number 7, which is public commentary. This is an opportunity, if you are joining us online, if you have questions for the commission, the city manager, or a comment in general that you'd like to make, this is your opportunity to do that. You can just type those questions in, and I'll wait for that for a few moments to see if anyone responds.
Mayor, could I go ahead and ask the few that I have?
Absolutely.
Want to wait?
You can, and that'll give the public time to get their comments typed in as well. So go ahead.
Okay. The first question that was asked of me was about the advertisement in the paper last weekend. It either said Section 3 or Section 8 housing. And this person's asking if we know where that is located in Lynn Haven. Does anybody know where that is?
I did not see that advertisement, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. I don't know if the city attorney or perhaps the manager could help there.
I have not seen that advertising there, and I when Commissioner Tender called me about it,
Yeah.
I have not seen that as well. So I'm not real sure. Do we have an address on it?
No, there's no address in the ad. It gives a phone number and says they are building Section 3 or Section 8. I'm not sure. Housing, and they're looking for construction workers.
And that's for Lynn Haven or just in the
Yes.
county? For Lynn
No,
Haven?
it said City of Lynn Haven.
Okay.
Okay,
Perhaps-
well,
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, Commissioner Russell.
Ms. Gaynor, isn't there a affordable housing project going up on, is it Hilltop going into the rec center?
Well, that is through Rural American, if I'm not mistaken, but that is a workforce housing, and there is a difference between Section 8 and workforce housing.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So perhaps we can investigate that and address it at the next meeting and see if we can find out what we're talking about there. So
I believe it was in Sunday's paper. I don't get the paper anymore. So,
Okay. Was there anything else?
and-
Kendra?
Yes, the roundabout. Well, this is more me, I guess, than somebody else asking. I did go down and take a look at it. I saw Vicky down there last night. The roundabout, I love it. It looks great. But I personally would recommend an additional sign because I had some folks down on Colorado contact me and they say, oh my gosh, people are just coming in and going to the left and they're afraid there's going to be big trouble down there. But I think it's an easy fix.
Yes, ma'am. And Commissioner Tender, before you go forward, I want you to know I was down there taking photos because I wanted to give our city Panhandle Engineering. There needs to be more signage, and then the way the stop sign is where it is coming out of Colorado is actually in the wrong place, and so those are going to be fixed today. Thank you so very much.
Even if they put up a sign that says roundabout, because when you come up on 9th Street, you kind of go.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I knew where I was going, but I guess not everybody did. And
that's going to go up.
Residents are talking about that. I don't even know if you can ask this question, but I am going to ask it anyway because I said I would.
Go ahead.
This resident asked me if we have an employee that has tested positive for the virus because they've been told that.
And I don't know the answer to that question personally, and I'm not sure if HIPAA would allow that. So I'll defer to, first of all, our city attorney before I ask city manager.
I believe it would probably be most appropriate unless it's a threat to other citizens not to specifically address that question.
So I think that's the answer to that question, Commissioner Tender. The health department, I can tell you in the meetings that we've had, it's very protective about information, and I certainly don't want us to, I mean, while everybody wants to know information, I certainly don't want us to step out on shaky ground as far as legalities or personal privacy. So
okay, they weren't asking
for now.
Yeah, they weren't asking for a name. They're just curious of how safe our employees are. And then the last question, it was kind of a second part to that one. Are the employees still working from home, or are they in the office every day?
All the employees who are able to work from home we don't have anyone in the office as far as I know, other than city managers there by herself in the office. And Mrs. Gaynor, I'll defer to you, but to my knowledge, the only city employees who are not working from home are those who are essential employees who are out doing essential services, but they're outside working from their trucks and not in offices together.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, I want to make sure, correct that as well, is that you're exactly right. In City Hall, it is myself, and then part of the day is our deputy clerk. And then over in the services department, of course, we continue to have those services following all of the guidelines. And we do have some people working from home, and even over in the service center, but the rest of the folks are out in the fields. So I just wanted to make sure you know that.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Russell.
There is a gentleman that is asking a question on YouTube, but the question, he's asked it now, but it refers to food truck ordinances. So you want to wait to that section and I'll read his question then?
He can go ahead and ask the question now during public commentary because he may, and then if it's not addressed, if we can't address it now, he could ask it again, or we can bring it back up.
Okay, well, I'll read the question for you. It says, Ted Edwards is questioning about the food truck ordinance. He says, under section 6, paragraph subsection 7, it says, please clarify. That sounds like if they're in a car, they can't be waited on.
Okay, why don't we hold that question then until we get to the item, and then we'll let the city attorney address it from the actual ordinance, if that's okay. And we appreciate that question very much. Mr. Neves, do you see any other questions from the public at this time on the YouTube questions, or Mrs. Gaynor?
No, ma'am, I don't see any.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Mayor, I wanted to ask a question, kind of a public commentary, but I want to ask a question of our city manager and to try to give clarity to the roundabout and over here. I've seen it too firsthand, and actually while they were building it, and In the center of the roundabout, there's a hollow circle, of course. Now, won't that be filled in with directional language or signs for people to see the roundabout better?
Absolutely. We're not finished with that. So all of the
Okay.
signage is not up yet. And today I'm going to actually be meeting one of our city engineers over there to show him some of the problems I see even right now with preliminary signage to make sure it flows better.
That's kind of what I thought. I thought that whole center of the roundabout, was going to be used for signage, so it
Yes,
should
yes.
become a non-issue. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other public commentary that we see on the account? None? Okay, we will move on then to the consent agenda. If anyone from the public has a question as we move on through the meeting, please feel free to participate with us. Item number 8 is the consent agenda. This is the approval of the minutes from last Tuesday morning, April 14th. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so the minutes stand approved. We'll move on to item number 9, which is under old business, and this will be the second reading of ordinance number 1094 regarding operations of food trucks in the city of Lynn Haven. The city attorney has this item, so I'll ask if he has any comments before we read the ordinance. Mr. Albritton?
Mayor, I have no further comments. As you and the commission are aware, we've talked about this a number of different times. I would, as far as the question from the public regarding section 6, the statement is selling or dispensing food to customers in a moving vehicle or otherwise engaging in drive-up sales. The thrust of that language is to prevent a scenario where you have drive-through service similar to a Chick-fil-A. If you're a Chick-fil-A or other fast food restaurant, you design your whole property to enable yourself to serve drive-through, to prevent blocking other businesses, to prevent blocking emergency entrance and exits. That is the thrust, is to prevent that from happening. The intent of a food truck is for you to park your car, get up, walk to the food truck and order. If we have people waiting in line, if you get where you have 10, 15, 20 people waiting in line at a food truck that is just a pop-up at some random location, we may incur traffic logjam issues because it's not designed for that.
Okay. I think that clarifies. It does for me anyway, and we'll see if there's any further comment about it. So at this time, Mrs. Gaynor, if you would please read the ordinance by title for the food truck operations.
Sure. Ordinance number 1094, an ordinance of the City Commission of Lynn Haven, Florida, creating a new chapter entitled Mobile Food Trucks Operating Within the City, providing definitions and regulations for mobile food trucks, requiring mobile food truck vendor permits, establishing regulations and prohibitions, providing for enforcement, appeals, and penalties, providing for repealer, codification, and severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval or otherwise?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion for approval and a second. Any further discussion from the commission? Do we see anything from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldrich,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so it stands approved, and food trucks, bring on the food. Lynn Haven's ready for you. Moving on to item number 10, which is new business. Discussion and possible approval of resolution number 2020-04-320, which is extending the declared state of emergency due to the coronavirus disease COVID-19 for an additional 7 days. Mrs. Gaynor, could you please read the resolution by title only, please?
A resolution and proclamation of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, proclaiming the existence of the state of emergency regarding novel coronavirus disease, COVID-19.
Thank you so much. And this is just, we're just renewing this emergency situation for another week. If there are any questions at this time, if not, if there's a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Russell.
do we have an idea of how much longer we're going to continue the emergency order? I mean, how many more weeks you think, approximately?
Sure, and some of that we're going to talk about in item number 13 of today's meeting. But the only reason at this point that I see a necessity for it is simply for staying in line with the county and state for funding purposes. I don't anticipate it to go on for a great deal longer as far as our city. That's my personal opinion. I have no data or, metrics to back that up with, but I see signs that the governor and his committee is getting ready to start, the reopening process in 3 steps. And I think with that going on, that we're going to see some of this going away. So that's the only answer I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? Okay, did we have a motion in a second? I'm sorry. We did. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public who has a comment? The commission? See nothing? Thank you so much. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Parno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. And so our emergency resolution will stay in effect for another 7 days until Tuesday, the 28th, when we reconvene. Item number 11 is the discussion and possible approval of Panhandle Engineering Task Order 14482-B for bid and project management services related to replacing fencing at lift stations and other city properties financed by SRF and FEMA reimbursement funding. And I believe we have Mr. Kidwell on this call with us this morning, who is our Director of Public Utilities, with a report. Mr. Kidwell?
Good morning. This is a task order to allow Panhandle Engineering to handle the bidding for all of our lift stations and water plants that have fence damage. This has kind of been on the back burner for a while now, since Hurricane Michael. We're taking advantage of some emergency funding through the state revolving fund. I think this is a good funding source for this project, and it'll help us get back to where we were pre-Michael with our fences.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval, or is there discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to make sure that after the task order is approved, we will come back to vote again on the selection of the company. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is to allow Panhandle to solicit bids for the fences. It'll follow all of our normal guidelines for that.
Okay, and then I know that Vicki and I have spoke about this months and months ago. Huh, that was weird. Then the other question I had on this, did we or did we not, and I think this is, I'm looking to you to help me remember, Vicki, but didn't we talk about, we got new black fencing all along Kinsall Park down there at the sewer situation, and that fencing blew down because then it had to get put back up. What kind of money did we spend on that? I mean, or is that something, was that done right after Michael?
That was
Sure,
done,
I
that
can-
was done. That was one of the things that the commission wanted in place because it was a safety issue. So we did put that in place shortly after, and I think it was somewhere along, Greg, you can probably remember, $32,000. We had that one put up. And so now that we have this SRF money in place, and if you remember, we originally put out a bid for the cemetery fencing as well. And once we found out that this SRF money is in place, and we could combine the 2 bids together. And of course, FEMA will be reimbursing us for the money that is due for anything that's not SRF related. We just felt it was much better to put it all together to get someone in that could handle a large amount of fencing at
Mhm.
one time.
And so it will be metal fencing, not the black plastic again. You know, Mr.
If I may,
Kidwell?
Go
Yes,
ahead,
yes,
Mr. Kidwell.
the fence is metal. It's just vinyl coated. Instead of that galvanized metal look, you get a much more nicer look. So it is metal fence with the vinyl coat on it. We opted to add the plastic vinyl privacy slats to give the neighborhood some
Mhm.
measure of privacy from the wastewater plant. The issue with the fence falling down was a tie issue. The contractor who has stood behind this every time it's blown off, he's come back and put it back up on his dime, used a aluminum fence wrap to wrap the fabric of the fence to the post. He changed that to vinyl coated steel, and we haven't had an issue yet. And we've had several storms since he's come back and did that for us.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner
And
Tinder. And, I would also,
That
while,
pricing was correct.
I'm sorry, who is,
This is Greg. The pricing on the fence that Vicky mentioned is correct.
and that pricing was?
34 and change.
Thank you. My comment, and it's one that I've made to staff before, but while we're looking at this fencing, I really personally, and I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I just need to put it out there because it's the only time we can talk. I am still not content with the fence the way we have it at the water treatment plant. When we resume operations at Kensaw full speed with Ball and the splash pad and the beach and all the activities that'll be going on there, I rarely, in fact, if ever, have seen the gate closed down there. And the fence does not, it looks like a child could really crawl under it. And there's just a lot about that fence that doesn't look secure to me. So it's something that, you know, I think that we should readdress as far as trying to make it, and we can do that in another item on another agenda. But I just wanted to throw that out there right now. That is probably one of our most important areas to make sure that it's safe. And a child could find that very attractive to wander across the park through the gate, looking at those stairs that lead up to the top of those towers, which would be just a devastating accident. And I never see that gate closed. So I think that's a real problem that needs to be addressed. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, if I may ask a question?
Yep.
Mr. Kidwell, do we have an estimate on the cost of the entire project that Panhandle is looking at overseeing for us?
No, not at this time. As everybody's probably aware, fencing and landscaping costs have gone skyrocketing. So we really don't have a good number yet for those projects. And it's such a wide variety. You know, we've got vinyl coated chain link, 8 foot. We've got 6 foot. We've got decorative fencing. So there's a lot of moving parts to this that we don't have a good handle on yet as far as total cost.
Well, my only question is because, I mean, I would hate for us to agree to a task order for $25,000 to oversee a $50,000 project. If you follow what I'm saying. So I just want to make sure that the fee is in line with the total cost of the contract.
I understand. We will follow up on that.
Is there, if I may ask Mr. Albritton, is there not some type of a formula for the percentage that a task order can be without having a bid for the task order or a project? Mr. Albritton?
Yes, Mayor, there is. It's something we've addressed in the past. My understanding from Panhandle is this is within, they anticipate it anyways, being within the statutory criteria.
Thank you. That would probably answer that question then. Is there any other discussion about approval of this task order?
Mayor, if I may, if I could ask,
Go ahead, Commissioner Tender.
if I could ask our attorney, what is that criteria? What is the percentage?
There's not a percentage, it's a dollar amount, and I believe you put me on the spot without it being in front of me, so I reserve the right to email you, Commissioner Tender, but I believe it's $5 million.
500? Did you say 500?
5 million.
Oh, oh, wow.
Big
Okay,
difference.
It was some-
I eagerly look forward to that email.
I'll send you the statute. It's something we addressed with some of the ballpark issues we
Yes.
had earlier, I believe, last year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Perno, I believe you had a question or a comment?
Yes, Mayor, I appreciate it. The only question I had is for Mr. Kidwell. If we didn't know the approximate amount of the project, do we know approximately how many lift stations, like the number of venues?
Yes, we have, we have 74 lift stations in total. Over the past 18 months, we have fixed some lift stations. We've kind of been doing it, one piece at a time. Some lift stations do not have a fence of that number. They've never had a fence, so they would of course fall out of the project. We have the 2 water plants, well 6. I don't have that number off the top of my head, Commissioner. I can certainly get you an accurate number and get it to you.
And Mayor,
Mayor.
if I may.
Who's asking? Mr. Albritton? Yes, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Commissioner Tender, it currently is 2 million construction fees, 200,000 in engineering fees. There is an amendment to that statute before the governor, which he's anticipated to sign for that to increase. That would take effect later on this year, but it's 2 million in estimated construction, 200,000 in engineering fees currently.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just to clarify, Mr. Kidwell, when he said that we haven't, on some of the lift stations, he meant the fencing for the lift stations. The lift stations themselves have been repaired for a long time. And also for the public's, just to remind the public that we have to pay for something before we can be reimbursed by FEMA for it. So sometimes when the public is asking, well, why hasn't this been done yet? Or why hasn't this happened yet? It's because the city has to pay for it up front to be able to be reimbursed. So just to clarify on that.
And Mayor, just one last comment too. When we do this bidding, there's really going to be 2 pots of funding, the SRF funding and the FEMA funding. Remember, there are so many fences that are down that fall up under the FEMA funding as well. And so we will really be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which we want to do. And putting all that under bidding, being under the FEMA guidelines so that we can, as you say, we have to pay for things first to get reimbursed for them.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Commissioner Tender.
Yeah, one more question.
Sure.
This is for Vicky. I know the 1 cemetery, or do we have 2 cemeteries included in this bid?
We have 2 cemeteries, and then we have all of the stormwater runoffs. Remember, a lot of those in some of the subdivisions where some of those fences are down, those are going to be included in that were blown off or just totally destroyed during the storm.
Okay, and then of course the 74 lift stations and the well 6 and 2 water plants. Does that sound about right?
Well, every lift station will not be included because every lift station did not have a fence that was destroyed by the storm. So it's not reimbursable if it didn't have a fence is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of the Panhandle Engineering Task Order 14482-B?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so it stands approved. Thank you, Mr. Kidwell, for participating and giving us that extra information. We really appreciate that. Moving to item number 12, this is a discussion regarding the city parks. Just wanted to bring this before the commission. I know the city manager has probably, or I'm sure that she notified each of you individually regarding the decision to close the basketball courts last week after our meeting. And because the commission had voted previously to keep all the parks open, this was a decision that I did approve for the city manager and the police chief to go forward with as far as closing that basketball court because they were seeing numbers close to 100 people down there. playing basketball and also refusing to follow the orders of the police department and really giving some, issues. So what I want to do is just bring that back before the commission and see if there is a motion to continue keeping those basketball courts closed and the rest of the parks open as we're doing now, or if someone has a different idea about it since we're here together. So.
Mayor, if I could speak to that for a moment. This is Commissioner
Sure,
Aldridge.
go ahead, Commissioner Aldridge.
I've kind of looked at the way, the governor has kind of wanted to take this surgical approach going forward, and I think the president's wanting to do the same thing. I think that's probably the most logical step for any of us to take. If people aren't following the rules or they can't abide by, what we're asking them to do, there are repercussions to those decisions to go out there and do that. The ones that do follow the rules shouldn't be punished for the ones that do not follow the rules. So I think as long as we're not having issues with parks, I'm 100% in favor of keeping these parks open. If we want to revisit the basketball courts in a week or two and say, hey, we'll leave that up to the commission and Ms. Gaynor, but I like the surgical approach, and that's all I have, Mayor.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Aldridge. And I guess what I was really asking the commission for was this was a decision that was made without the full commission. And since we're meeting weekly, and that's why, in case something like this comes up, so that we can quickly reverse something if the rest of the commission is not in agreement with it. So for the police officers were getting a great, they had people in their face, and it wasn't really so much just Lynn Haven residents using the park, as we have the only basketball courts open at this time. And so people were coming from all over the county to use those courts, and it was just out of control. I'll let Mrs. Gaynor speak to it before we go further. Go ahead, Mrs. Gaynor.
Yes, ma'am. And we did. We had several calls from residents saying that there were anywhere from 75 to 100 people on a basketball court. And there, of course, is no social distancing there. We had people utilizing the court to carry out agility tests and charging people for that time there. And we just didn't think that was something that we should allow within the city. And if you look at the comments on our Facebook posts, our residents were very happy that we went on and do that, because we want to keep everybody safe. We want to keep our residents safe, as well as the people, our police officers who have to go out and deal with a lot of these issues. And they did get a lot of pushback. And so I think my opinion now is that we keep the basketball courts closed and the parks open until further notice.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaynor. Is there further comments from the commission or questions?
Mayor,
if I may?
if I may? Oh, go ahead, Dan.
No, Ms. Tender, you go ahead. Go ahead first, Ms. Tender. Ladies first.
Okay. I want to say that I agree with what Vicki is saying, because when she called me that night, I said, it's like we have to protect them. We have to protect them against themselves and making bad decisions. And even if I took the approach that, oh, well, if they want to do it and they get sick, so sad, too bad for them, which I don't take that approach, because those people are going to come out and they're going to be somebody that walks into City Hall and leaves their handprint on the door. They're going to be the same people that I'm going to be, possibly passing in a store, even though I haven't been in a store in over a month. But, even if I were, they're going to expose me, even the people coming down to get masks. Now, I'm not in that mask bucket. I get somebody else to put them in, honestly. And because of my age and having asthma and stuff. And so I'm trying to be personally very, careful. But I'm always thinking it's not what I'm doing, it's what the other people the other people are doing and the choices they're making that could certainly affect me. And so that's all I have to say about it. But I do agree with keeping all the parks open, but locking up that basketball court. And especially when I heard they were charging youth money and running some kind of little off the side leagues. And they were keeping, everything comes down to money. I get it. I don't agree with it, but that's about how it's looking. But when it comes down to that, it's like, that just seems unfair to the youth and all of that. But anyway, I could go on about it for hours, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tender. Commissioner Russell?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. When the city manager contacted me about this, you know, I told her, you know, that it's a hard decision, but I would support you and her and the mayor with whatever decision y'all make. And I hate that we have to close the basketball courts, but if they can't, if anybody, you know, doesn't do what they're supposed to, we got to take action. So I'd like to make a motion that we continue on keeping the parks open and keep the basketball court closed until the commission decides otherwise.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the commission?
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Perno.
I just wanted to reinforce. I too spoke with the city manager at the night the basketball courts were closed. I actually appealed to see if there was any way that that they could, you know, filter the process where there wouldn't be social distancing. But the way she explained it, it may have created something where it was a detriment to the people and to our first responders. And I told her I fully support her and Chief Ramey on any decisions going forward as far as that goes. I thought about it, you know, at the very second I heard about it, and all I could think about was, you know, we're kind of denying some of the youth the opportunity to play there and do the right thing, but when there's an overwhelming amount of people and it causes that kind of disruption, I fully support what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perno. Is there any further discussion from the commission? Do we have any comments from the public, Mr. Neves? Doesn't appear that we do. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. And so with that vote, we'll continue to keep all of our parks, our boat ramp, everything open as before, with just the exclusion of the basketball courts until further notice. So moving on to item number 13. This is discussion and possible approval to return to regular commission meeting schedule and venue. This is something that I discussed with the city manager this week. April 28th, which is next Tuesday, would be our regularly scheduled commission meeting. And so I'm just going to say what I discussed with the city manager, and then if anybody wants to pick up and make a motion, please feel free to do that because I can't make the motion. But I discussed with her that I thought for us to be able to move forward with some of the workshops, the rebuilding of the city, being able to have those very vital meetings that we need to have, although we could do them virtually, it will be much easier, and I think we can have much more robust discussions in person. So I'm suggesting to the city manager that we would begin next Tuesday having our in-person city council meetings, city commission meetings at the city hall as we've done before. That would be open to limited numbers of people using social distancing and hopefully following the CDC guidelines of a mask in a public place if they're in the audience. Just a thought. And then we would continue into May with just every 2 weeks with our regularly scheduled meeting. I did consult also with our city attorney about the fact that if we continue to keep the emergency in place for the purposes of public funding that we may be able to receive, would we be able to do that by meeting only every 2 weeks? And our city attorney said that we could do that, and I would like to call on him at this time to explain how that is possible to the commission.
Yeah, yes, Mayor. As the commission's aware, the statute requires renewing a state of emergency every 7 days. I think in this situation, should the commission wish to go back to meeting on its regular schedule, that what would be appropriate would be that the week in between meetings, the mayor could, assuming it's been approved by the commission, sign the declaration of emergency, and that following week when we have a commission meeting, it could be ratified by the commission. That is not unusual. It's actually going on in other municipalities in our area.
Any questions for the city attorney regarding that? So that's sort of the proposal that I made to the city manager. She was in agreement with it because we have so many of our, especially with the rebuild, we have our architects and others who are wanting to come and have workshops with us and get back with us. So I don't want to put anyone here on the spot if you're not willing to meet in person, but it's just something I wanted to throw out. So.
Mayor, could I ask a question? Would it be possible for me to just call in so I'm there for the vote? Because until I have to look at something, I
Absolutely.
can't. Okay. Just because I'm not comfortable getting out there yet and being around a lot of people until I hear some more conclusive evidence, which I don't think we're going to get. At this point, it doesn't look like it, but as long as I can call in, I have no problem. And if we're already ready to start looking at drawings and things like that, then I would obviously want to come and see those. But what about the public? We're still going to give them a chance to vote in on that, on the rebuild, right?
Well, what I was proposing is that the meeting would go back like it did before we went to virtual, that the public could attend, but it would be sitting 6 feet apart and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we'd only be able to accommodate about 10 people.
Probably, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the public could participate virtually. And there's nothing saying that we have to change what we're doing right now. I just think as the governor begins the reopening process, which I believe he's going to be doing, fairly quickly over the next few weeks, and especially with the number of cases that we have in our area, which is fairly rural, that with carefulness and, being aware of others, that we could go forward with that. But anyway, I just throw it out there. So the commission needs to make the decision. It's just my thoughts.
Thank you.
And Mayor, may I just say a few things too?
Sure, go ahead.
Our thought behind this as well is that we need to really let the commission look at some preliminary numbers, preliminary sketches. Nothing has been in stone that you can see and give us some feedback on it, because we're at that point that we really do need your feedback on it before we do anything to move forward. So, I would envision if we had a commission meeting in person, and then after that, we would have the workshops that I would have both one to come in at 1 hour, one to come in at another hour, firms, architect and design firms to come in to explain to you how we got to these numbers, what that these particular buildings would look like. So each one would have an hour after the commission meeting, which would be next week, that we would listen to.
So does anyone have input, or I'm just hearing no input?
Mayor, if I may, I think I'd be happy to come down and for an hour and look at whatever, at the office. But as far as your suggestion goes, I think our governor's order was till the 30th. So I think we might be a week too soon on this, and we'll probably get more information coming down from the state. I would think that we can continue at least one more week what we're doing, and then kind of abide by what you said. So just to be on the safe side and to go the full till April 30th as the governor mandated. So thank you.
And Commissioner Perno, I do appreciate what you're saying. My understanding of the governor's order was for non-essential business, and the county commission has been meeting in person all along. So we wouldn't be doing anything against what the governor said, but if you prefer that we not do it, that's certainly within, certainly your opinion, and I certainly respect it, but we would not be going against the governor's order by meeting as a commission. So I just want to clarify that. Mr. Albritton, did you want to make sure that I didn't step out on the wrong limb there? I think I was correct.
From a legal standpoint, this commission can decide whether to hold public meetings or not. Obviously, if public meetings are held following the CDC guidelines, would be advisable as far as social distancing, et cetera. But as pure legality of it, this commission, if they wanted to, could hold public meetings.
And Commissioner Perno, I did not mean that in any way to disrespect your opinion. I was just saying that we wouldn't be going against the governor's orders, but if you still prefer that we meet virtually, that's certainly within your rights.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wasn't coming back at you in any way. I just wanted to make sure that we were as safe as possible with that. So, and I appreciate the clarity from City Attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I could speak to that as well, while we're all jumping on this bandwagon here, I kind of have mixed emotions like everyone else. today in the meeting. You know, there's a part of me that wants to start phasing in normal, like the governor and the president and all of you in this meeting want. But then there's also a part that says, you know, we also don't want to put the, as my grandmother used to say, the cart before the horse. So, you know, I'm game for or okay with whichever way. If we want to leave it optional for a commissioner to come in or not come in, or if we want to make it to where if we want to show up that morning for the meeting and separate together or separate apart from each other, I'm good with either way the commission wants to go. So, but I do like normal. So let's try to get back as soon as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Aldridge. Commissioner Russell, you have any thoughts?
Mayor, thank you. I kind of concur with Mr. Aldridge, Commissioner Aldridge. I'm good with having commission meetings or doing it online. I would like us to get back to normal. But at the same token, if there's other commissioners on here that are concerned about health issues, then I'm willing to put it off another week. So, you know, I'm not going to make a motion because I can go either way with it.
Okay. So what if, I need some direction then from the attorney. Would I ask for a motion that we keep things the way we're doing it virtually for another week, or should I just ask to remove this item from the agenda till next time? What would be the proper procedure, Mr. Albritton? I just need a little direction.
Mayor, I believe at this time there could be a motion from any of your four fellow commissioners to either A, adopt a new schedule, whether that is to have in-person meetings next week or to begin them in May, or if there is no motion, then we would just move forward. It would not need a removal from the agenda. We would just move forward as no motion taken, and we would continue with our current schedule.
Thank you for that advice. If all the commissioners understood that, we'll just see what happens.
Mayor, if I could just say one more thing real quick. I certainly don't want to, for my personal feelings about it, as long as everybody else is okay with me calling in until I am comfortable, I have no problem with whatever the majority wants to do.
Commissioner Tender, I certainly respect that very much, but at the same point, I heard some hesitancy in other commissioners as well. And as far as you're calling in, you know, that's for as long as you want to do that, even after we decide that can be done under these circumstances.
Okay.
But at the same point, I heard hesitancy with the other commissioners too. So we want to make sure, I personally would rather we be all of one accord. That's where I'd like to go with it, but I'm going to quiet and see what happens next.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to, let's go ahead and keep as is for another week. Once we get to, I believe it's April 28th, that's our next meeting. We can reconvene. The governor will have maybe some updated guidelines, or the CDC by then, and we can make a better decision. I think anybody that knows me again knows I'm ready to get back to normal. I know the county's meeting. I know there's other municipalities that are getting together, and I want our family together again too, as soon as possible. On the flip side, I want to be safe. So if we have a couple of commissioners that feel unsure, I feel sure to make the motion to hold off one more week.
There's
I'll
been a
second
motion.
that motion.
There's been a motion and a second discussion. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Parno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and thank you all for that great input, and I feel good that we're all of one accord on what to do. And with that, item number 14 is to adjourn the meeting, and we'll adjourn. Everybody be safe and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at our virtual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.